The rope was still in her pocket, the same rope that hanged her husband 3 months ago. Clara Whitmore pulled it out, stared at the old oak tree, and whispered, "I'm coming, Daniel." Then she heard it, a child's voice cutting through the blizzard. "Papa, there's a lady dying in the snow!" 5 small figures emerged from the white curtain, 5 pairs of desperate eyes, and the youngest one, barely 5 years old, grabbed Clara's frozen hand and said the words that would change everything. "Please don't die. We need a mama." If you're watching from somewhere warm tonight, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far Clara's story travels. Now settle in, because what happens next will shatter your heart before it puts it back together. The blizzard had teeth. That's what Clara Whitmore thought as she stumbled through the white nothing, her boots breaking through ice-crusted snow with every step. Her fingers had stopped hurting an hour ago. That was bad. She knew enough about winter to know that when the pain stopped, death wasn't far behind. She didn't mind. The rope in her pocket felt heavier than it should. Just a length of hemp, frayed at one end where they'd cut her husband down. She'd stolen it from the undertaker's wagon 3 months ago, and she'd carried it across 4 territories since. "Almost there, Daniel," she whispered through cracked lips. "Almost there." The town had appeared through the storm like a ghost. Wooden buildings hunched against the wind, smoke rising from chimneys, life happening behind frosted windows. Clara had walked past all of it, past the general store, where a woman pulled her child inside at the sight of her, past the saloon, where men's laughter died when she stumbled by, past the church with its crooked steeple and its promises she no longer believed. She'd walked until the buildings gave way to empty fields, until the road became nothing but snow and silence, until she found what she was looking for. An old oak tree, bare branches reaching toward a gray sky, strong enough to hold her weight. Clara's knees buckled. She went down hard, the cold rushing up through her threadbare dress like water through a sieve. The rope came out of her pocket, rough against her frozen fingers. "Forgive me," she said to no one, to everyone, to the God she wasn't sure existed anymore. She was threading the rope through her hands when she heard it. "Papa! Papa, come quick!" Clara's head snapped up. Through the swirling white, she saw movement, small figures running toward her. "There's a lady! She's dying!" No, Clara thought. No, go away. Let me finish this. But they didn't go away. They came closer, 5 of them, materializing out of the storm like something from a fever dream. Children. Different heights, different ages, all of them bundled in coats too thin for this weather. All of them staring at her with wide, frightened eyes. The tallest one, a boy maybe 12 years old, reached her first. He dropped to his knees beside her, his breath coming in white puffs. "Ma'am? Ma'am, can you hear me?" Clara tried to speak. Nothing came out but a croak. "She's freezing," the boy said over his shoulder. "Emma, give me your scarf. Billy, stop standing there like a fool and help me get her up." "I ain't a fool, Jack." A smaller boy, maybe 7, scrambled forward. "I found her first. I'm the one who—" "Shut up and lift." Hands grabbed Clara's arms. Small hands, surprisingly strong. She wanted to tell them to stop, to leave her alone, to let her finish what she'd started. But her body wouldn't cooperate. It wanted to live, even when her mind had given up. "She's too heavy," a girl's voice said. Practical, worried. "We can't carry her all the way home." "Then we drag her." "Jack! You got a better idea, Emma?" Clara felt herself being pulled across the snow. The rope slipped from her fingers, disappearing into the white. She reached for it, but her arm wouldn't move. "Daniel," she thought. "I'm sorry. I tried." "What's that in her hand?" The small voice came from somewhere near Clara's feet. Is that a rope? Silence. Even through the fog of hypothermia, Clara felt the weight of it. Don't matter what it is, Jack said finally. Keep moving. But why would she have a... I said keep moving. They dragged her for what felt like hours. Clara drifted in and out, catching fragments of conversation through the howling wind. Pa's gonna be mad. Don't care if he's mad. We couldn't just leave her. She's real skinny, ain't she? Like she ain't eaten in days. Billy, I swear to God, if you don't stop talking. Then there was warmth. Not much, but enough to feel like mercy. Clara's eyes fluttered open. She was inside somewhere. Wooden walls, a fire crackling, the smell of smoke and something cooking, something burned. Pa! Pa! Heavy footsteps, a door slamming. Then a man's voice, low and rough and tired. What in the name of... Jack, what did you do? We found her in the snow, Pa, by the old oak tree. She was dying. You can't just bring people. She was dying, Pa. We couldn't leave her. Silence. Clara tried to focus, but everything was blurry. She could make out a shape standing over her. Tall, broad shoulders, a face she couldn't quite see. She got frostbite on her fingers. The man's voice again, closer now. Maybe her toes, too. Emma, get the blankets from my room. Jack, put more wood on the fire. Billy, stop poking her. I wasn't poking. I was checking if she's alive. She's alive. Go get the whiskey from the cabinet. I'm 7, Pa. You said I ain't allowed to touch the whiskey. I'm saying you're allowed now. Go. More movement, more warmth. Something wet pressed against Clara's forehead. She tried to speak, managed only a whimper. Easy now, the man's voice, right beside her ear. You're safe. You're gonna be all right. I don't want to be all right, Clara thought. But she couldn't say it. Couldn't do anything but lie there, while strangers tried to save a life she'd already decided to throw away. She woke to voices. Been 3 days, Pa. When's she gonna wake up? When her body's ready, Billy. But what if she never wakes up? What if she's like Sleeping Beauty and she needs a kiss to... She ain't Sleeping Beauty, and nobody's kissing nobody. Clara's eyes opened. She was in a bed, a real bed, with a real mattress and real blankets piled so high she could barely move. The room was small, plain, with a single window letting in gray winter light. A face appeared above her. Small, female, framed by braids the color of wheat. Maybe 10 years old, with round spectacles perched on her nose. She's awake, the girl shouted. Pia, Jack, everyone, she's awake! Thunder on the stairs. The door burst open, and suddenly the room was full of children. Clara counted them through bleary eyes. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a fifth, a tiny one being carried by the oldest boy. See? The boy with the glasses, a girl, Clara realized, spoke with obvious satisfaction. I told you she'd wake up. I've been monitoring her vital signs. Her breathing stabilized yesterday. You don't know what vital signs means, Emma. I read about it in Pa's medical book. You read half a page and fell asleep. I did not fall enough. The voice came from the doorway. Clara turned her head and got her first clear look at Samuel Thornton. He wasn't handsome, not in any way that would make a woman look twice. His face was weathered, lined by sun and wind and grief. Dark hair shot through with gray at the temples, though he couldn't be much past 35. Eyes the color of storm clouds, watchful and wary, and desperately tired. But there was something about the way he stood, solid, steady, like a fence post that had weathered every storm and refused to fall, that made Clara's throat tighten for reasons she didn't understand. You're awake, he said, stating a fact, not asking a question. Yes. Her voice came out as a rasp. Where? How long? 3 days. You had fever the first night. Thought we might lose you. He stepped into the room, and the children parted around him like water around a stone. I'm Samuel Thornton. These are my children. All of them? The words slipped out before Clara could stop them. Something flickered in Samuel's eyes. Might have been amusement. Might have been pain. All 5. Jack's the oldest. He's 12. Emma's 10. Billy's 7. Rose is 5. He nodded toward the smallest child, a girl with enormous eyes who clung to Jack's leg like a lifeline. And this here's Thomas. He just turned 2 last month. The baby, Thomas, stared at Clara with the unblinking intensity of the very young. Then he stuck his thumb in his mouth and buried his face in Jack's shoulder. He's shy, Billy announced. Rose is too. She don't talk at all. Not since Mama, Billy. Samuel's voice was quiet, but it cut through the chatter like a knife. Billy fell silent. Clara looked at Rose. The little girl looked back, her gaze too old for her face, too knowing for her years. She didn't speak, didn't smile, just watched, like she was waiting for something Clara couldn't name. Clara tried to sit up, failed, tried again. I should go. I've imposed on you long enough. You ain't going nowhere. Samuel moved to the side of the bed, and Clara flinched before she could stop herself. He noticed, stopped, put his hands where she could see them. Easy. I ain't gonna hurt you. But you got frostbite on 3 fingers and both feet, and you ain't eaten in God knows how long. You try to walk out of here, you'll be dead before you hit the property line. Maybe that's what I want. The words fell into the room like stones into still water. The children went quiet. Even Billy, who seemed incapable of silence, pressed his lips together and said nothing. Samuel studied her for a long moment. His gray eyes moved to her hands, to the raw red patches where frostbite had kissed her skin. Then lower, to her wrists, to the thin white scars she'd stopped trying to hide. He didn't ask, didn't judge, just nodded once, like he'd confirmed something he already suspected. Jack, he said, without looking away from Clara, take your brothers and sisters downstairs. Help Emma start breakfast. But Pa... Now, son. Jack hesitated, then gathered the younger children with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been doing it far too long. Rose had to be pried off his leg and handed to Emma, who carried her out with obvious reluctance. I want to stay, Billy protested. I found her. She's my discovery. She ain't a discovery, Billy. She's a person. Samuel finally looked at his son. Go. I'll be down in a minute. The door closed. Silence filled the room like snowfall. Samuel pulled a wooden chair to the bedside and sat down, his movements slow and deliberate, like he was trying not to spook a wild animal. What's your name? Clara, she swallowed. Clara Whitmore. Where you from, Clara Whitmore? Does it matter? Reckon it might. Reckon it might not. But I got 5 children in this house, and I need to know if the woman sleeping under my roof is going to bring trouble to my door. Trouble. The word echoed in Clara's head. She was nothing but trouble. Had been since the day Daniel died. I'm from Yuma, she said finally. Before that, Texas. Before that, she shook her head. Doesn't matter. I'm from nowhere now. Everybody's from somewhere. Not me. Not anymore. Samuel leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking under his weight. That rope we found with you. Billy wanted to know what it was for. Clara's chest tightened. What did you tell him? Told him it was for tying things. Didn't specify what things. His eyes held hers, steady and unblinking. You want to tell me the truth? She should lie. Should make up a story about securing luggage or leading horses. But something in Samuel's gaze made her want to tell the truth, made her tired of the lies she'd been carrying. It's the rope they used to hang my husband. Samuel didn't flinch, didn't recoil, just kept watching her with those storm-gray eyes. What was he hanged for? Robbery. They said he stole payroll from the mining company where he worked. Clara's voice went flat, dead. He didn't do it. The foreman did. Daniel found out, was going to report him. So the foreman framed him instead. And you couldn't prove he was innocent? I tried. Nobody would listen. A miner's wife against a company man? I never had a chance. Clara looked at the ceiling, at the cracks in the wooden beams. They hanged him on a Tuesday. Sunny day. Birds singing. I stood in the crowd and watched him die. And there wasn't a damned thing I could do.
I'm sorry. Don't be. Being sorry doesn't change anything.
She turned her head, met his eyes. After he died, I became the widow of a thief. No one would hire me. No one would rent to me. I walked from town to town for 3 months, and every door closed in my face. Yesterday, I decided I was done walking. So you came out here to die? Yes. And my children found you instead? Yes. Clara's throat burned. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for them to see that. I didn't mean for anyone to... Stop. Samuel's voice was firm, but not unkind. You don't got to apologize for wanting the pain to end. But I need you to understand something. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his face closer to hers than it had been before. My children found you for a reason. I don't know if it's God, or fate, or just dumb luck, but they found you. They dragged you half a mile through a blizzard because they couldn't stand the thought of leaving you to die. And now you're in my house, in my bed, and my 5-year-old daughter, who hasn't spoken a word since her mother died, has been sitting outside that door for 3 days, waiting for you to wake up. Clara's breath caught. I ain't asking you to live for me, Samuel continued. I'm a stranger. My problems ain't yours. But before you decide to give up, I'm asking you to look at those children. Look at what they did for you. And then decide if you still want to throw away the life they fought so hard to save. He stood up, the chair scraping against the wooden floor. There's soup on the stove, probably burned by now. I ain't much of a cook. But it's warm and it's food. Come down when you're ready. He was at the door when Clara spoke. Mr. Thornton. He stopped, his hand on the handle. Why? Why would you help me? You don't know me, don't know what I've done or who I am. Samuel turned. His expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes looked almost like recognition, like he was seeing something in Clara that she couldn't see in herself. Because my wife died 2 years ago, he said quietly, and I know what it's like to want to follow her. I know what it's like to stand at the edge of that darkness and wonder if it'd be easier to just step forward. What stopped you? Samuel glanced toward the door, toward the sounds of children arguing downstairs. They did. 5 reasons to keep breathing, even when breathing felt like the hardest thing in the world. He looked back at Clara. Maybe now you got 1 reason too. At least for today. He left. The door closed softly behind him. Clara lay in the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of a household coming alive. Pots clanging, children squabbling, a baby crying. And somewhere beneath it all, a man's voice, low and steady, holding everything together through sheer force of will. She thought about the rope, lost somewhere in the snow. She thought about Daniel, waiting for her on the other side. And she thought about a little girl with enormous eyes who hadn't spoken in 2 years, but had sat outside Clara's door for 3 days, waiting. Just for today, Clara told herself. Just 1 more day. She pushed back the blankets and swung her legs over the side of the bed. The kitchen was chaos. Clara stood in the doorway, taking in the scene. Emma at the stove, stirring something that was definitely burning. Jack trying to feed Thomas, who was spitting porridge everywhere. Billy chasing a chicken, an actual chicken, around the table while shouting something about it being his pet. And Rose, silent Rose, sitting in the corner with her knees pulled to her chest, watching everything with those two old eyes. Samuel stood in the middle of it all, looking like a man who had long ago accepted that this was his life. "Billy," he bellowed, "get that chicken out of my kitchen!" "But Pa, Henrietta wants breakfast too." "Henrietta is breakfast. Now—" He stopped. His eyes found Clara in the doorway. The kitchen went quiet. Even the chicken stopped squawking. "You're up," Samuel said unnecessarily. "I'm up." Clara took a step forward, then another. Her legs were shaky, her feet still bandaged, but she made it to the table without falling.
"That soup smells like it's burning," she said.
"It's not soup anymore," Emma said glumly. "I think it's punishment. Can I try?" Emma looked at her father. Samuel nodded. Clara moved to the stove, her body remembering the motions, even when her mind felt far away. She lifted the pot lid, assessed the damage, and reached for a wooden spoon. "Salt," she said, "and water, quickly." Emma scrambled to obey. Clara worked without thinking, adding, stirring, tasting, adjusting. Within minutes, the burned smell had faded, replaced by something that actually resembled food. "How'd you do that?" Billy demanded, the chicken temporarily forgotten. "Pa's been trying to cook for 2 years, and everything still tastes like boots." "I was a cook," Clara said. "Before." "A real cook? Like in a restaurant?" "In a hotel. In Yuma." "What's Yuma?" "A town. In Arizona Territory." "Is it far?" "Far enough." Billy opened his mouth to ask another question, but Jack elbowed him hard in the ribs. "Let her alone, Billy. She just woke up from almost dying." "But I got questions." "You always got questions. Shut up and eat." They sat around the table, all of them, including Clara, though she wasn't sure how that happened. Samuel sat at the head, Thomas on his lap. The children arranged themselves with the practiced ease of people who'd done this 1,000 times before. The soup was passed around. Clara watched as each child tasted it, as their expressions shifted from skepticism to surprise to something like wonder. "This is good," Emma said, sounding almost offended. "This is actually good." "Don't sound so shocked," Clara murmured. "But everything's been bad for so long." "Emma?" Samuel's voice was gentle but firm. "Manners." "Sorry, Pa." "Sorry, ma'am." "Ma'am." The word hit Clara somewhere deep. She hadn't been called anything but widow, or that woman, in 3 months.
"Clara," she said. "You can call me Clara."
"Clara." Rose's voice was so soft that Clara almost missed it. So soft that for a moment she thought she'd imagined it. The table went still. Samuel's spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. Emma's eyes went wide. Jack looked like he'd been slapped. Even Billy, for once, said nothing. Rose was looking directly at Clara. Her lips moved again, forming the word like it was something precious. "Clara." "Rose," Samuel's voice cracked. "Rose, baby, you talked." The little girl didn't look at her father, didn't look at anyone except Clara. She slid off her chair, crossed to where Clara sat, and climbed into her lap with the unquestioning trust of the very young. Then she laid her head against Clara's chest and closed her eyes. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Clara looked down at the small body curled against her, at the tangled hair and the dirty face, and the tiny hands gripping her dress like a lifeline. She looked up at Samuel, who was staring at his daughter with an expression that was equal parts hope and heartbreak. "She hasn't talked," he said, his voice rough. Not one word. Not since her mama died. We tried everything. Doctors, tonics, prayer. Nothing worked. Maybe, Clara's throat was tight. Maybe she was waiting. For what? Clara didn't have an answer. Didn't have any answers at all. But she wrapped her arms around Rose and held on. And for the first time in 3 months, she felt something other than the cold emptiness that had followed her from Yuma. She felt needed. That night, after the children were in bed and the house had settled into quiet, Clara found Samuel on the porch. He was sitting on the steps, a cup of coffee in his hands, staring out at the snow-covered fields. She sat down beside him, leaving space between them. "She still ain't said nothing else," Samuel said without looking at her. "Just that one word, your name." "That's more than nothing." "I know." He was quiet for a moment. I've been trying for 2 years to reach her. 2 years of talking and singing and reading stories and begging her to just say something, anything. And then you show up half dead and she says your name like it's the easiest thing in the world. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." Samuel finally looked at her, and there was something in his eyes that wasn't accusation or resentment. It was gratitude, raw and unguarded. "You gave me my daughter back, even if it's just one word, even if it's just for today. You gave me hope." Clara didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to hold something so precious when she'd been empty for so long. "I should tell you," she said instead, "about why I came here, about what I was planning." "You already told me." "Not all of it." She took a breath. "The rope. It wasn't just any rope. It was the rope they used on Daniel. I kept it, carried it for 3 months. I was going to use it on myself." Samuel said nothing. "I was going to hang myself from that oak tree where your children found me. I wanted to die the same way he did. I thought," her voice broke, "I thought it would bring me closer to him somehow, that we'd be together again." "And now?" Clara looked at her hands, at the frostbite scars that were already starting to heal. "Now I don't know. Rose climbed into my lap today and looked at me like I was something precious, like I mattered, and I haven't felt that way in so long that I'd forgotten what it was like." "You do matter. You don't know me." "I know enough." Samuel set down his coffee, turned to face her fully. "I know you survived something that would have broken most people. I know you walked through fire and ice and came out the other side. I know my daughter spoke for the first time in 2 years because of you. That ain't nothing, Clara. That's everything." The wind picked up, blowing snow across the porch. Clara shivered, and without thinking, Samuel shrugged off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. "You should get inside," he said. "You're still recovering." In a minute, she pulled the coat tighter. "Mr. Thornton, Samuel." Samuel. The name felt strange on her tongue. Good strange. "I can't promise I'll stay. I can't promise I won't want to give up again. But I can promise to try. One day at a time." That's all anyone can do. Samuel stood, offered her his hand. "One day at a time. Starting with tomorrow." Clara looked at his hand, calloused, strong, steady. The hand of a man who'd been carrying the weight of 5 children and a broken heart for 2 years, and hadn't let either one crush him. She took it, and when he pulled her to her feet, she didn't let go. One day, Clara told herself as she lay in bed that night, listening to the wind howl outside. Just one more day. But somewhere deep inside, in a place she'd thought was dead, something had started to grow. Something that felt almost like hope. 1 day turned into 2. 2 turned into 5. 5 turned into a week. Clara stopped counting. She told herself it was because of Rose. The little girl had attached herself to Clara like a shadow, following her from room to room, sleeping outside her door when Samuel finally insisted she return to her own bed. Rose still didn't speak. That single word, Clara's name, had been a miracle that hadn't repeated itself. But her silence felt different now. Less like absence, more like waiting. "She's never done this," Emma said on the fourth morning, watching Rose trail Clara to the kitchen. "Not with anyone. Not even Pa. Maybe she just needs time. She's had 2 years of time." Emma pushed her spectacles up her nose, a habit Clara had noticed she did when she was thinking hard. "I've been keeping notes. Scientific observation. Rose's behavioral patterns have shifted significantly since your arrival. You're 10 years old. I'm intellectually advanced." Emma said it without arrogance, just fact. "Ma used to say I'd be a doctor someday, or a scientist, or maybe both." Clara's hands stilled over the bread dough she was kneading. "Your mother sounds like she was a remarkable woman." "She was." Emma's voice went quiet. "She was the best mother in the whole territory, maybe the whole country. She could do anything: cook, sew, ride horses, shoot a rifle better than Pa. And she loved us so much it was like being wrapped in a warm blanket all the time." "You must miss her very much." "Every day." Emma wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed. "Billy says he doesn't remember her face anymore. He pretends he does, but I know he's lying." And Thomas never knew her at all. He was only 3 months old when she got sick. Clara thought about Daniel, about how his face was already starting to blur in her memory, no matter how hard she tried to hold on to it. "The forgetting is the hardest part," she said softly. Emma looked at her with those 2 wise eyes. "You lost someone too, didn't you? Someone you loved." "Yes." "Is that why you were in the snow? Why you wanted to—" Emma stopped, bit her lip. "Sorry. Pa said we're not supposed to ask about that." "It's all right." Clara resumed kneading, the familiar motion grounding her. "And yes, that's why." "Do you still want to? Die, I mean?" The question should have shocked her, should have made her lie, protect this child from truths too heavy for her years. But Emma was looking at her with such fierce directness that Clara couldn't bring herself to be anything but honest. "Some days," she admitted, "some days the wanting is so loud I can barely think. But other days—" She looked at Rose, who had curled up in the corner with a rag doll, watching them. "Other days, there are reasons to stay." Emma nodded slowly. "That's good. That's scientific progress." Despite everything, Clara laughed. It came out rusty, unused, but real. "What's so funny?" Billy burst through the kitchen door, covered in mud and what looked like chicken feathers. "What'd I miss? Why's Clara laughing?" "Because you look like you lost a fight with Henrietta," Jack said, following his brother inside. "Which you probably did." "I did not lose. I was teaching her tricks." "Chickens don't do tricks, Billy. Henrietta does. She can—" "Enough!" Samuel's voice cut through the chaos. He stood in the doorway, Thomas on his hip, looking like a man who had long ago surrendered to pandemonium. "Billy, go wash. Jack, help your brother. Emma, set the table. And someone please tell me why there's a chicken in my bedroom." "That's where Henrietta sleeps, Pa." "That is not where—" Samuel stopped, took a breath, and turned to Clara. "I apologize. This household is not what you're used to." "I'm getting used to it," Clara said, and she meant it. The trouble started in town. Samuel had avoided taking Clara to Copper Ridge for the first week, saying she needed to recover, saying the weather was too harsh, saying 100 things that they both knew were excuses. But supplies were running low, and Clara had insisted. "I can't hide forever," she'd told him, "and I won't let your family go without because people might talk." People will talk. That's what people do. Then let them. He'd looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his gray eyes. Then he'd nodded and hitched up the wagon. The stairs started before they even reached the main street. Clara felt them like physical weight, eyes peering from windows, whispers following the wagon like smoke. Samuel kept his gaze forward, his jaw set. "Don't pay them any mind," he said quietly. "I'm not." But she was. Every whisper cut. Every pointed look drew blood. She'd thought she was used to it after Yuma, after all the towns that had turned her away. She wasn't. Maybe you never got used to being seen as something less than human. The general store was worse. The moment Clara walked through the door with Samuel, every conversation stopped. Mrs. Patterson, the shopkeeper's wife, pressed her lips together so hard they went white. "Mr. Thornton," she said, pointedly ignoring Clara, "what can I help you with today? Need flour, sugar, salt? Coffee if you have it." Samuel's voice was even, betraying nothing. "And fabric. Enough for children's clothes." "We have all of that." Mrs. Patterson's eyes finally flickered to Clara. "Is this your new help?" "This is Clara Whitmore. She's staying with us." "Stayin'?" The word dripped with implication. "I see." A woman near the back of the store, dressed in silk that had no business being in a frontier town, stepped forward. She was beautiful in a cold way, with perfectly styled hair and eyes like chips of ice. "Samuel Thornton," she said, her voice carrying across the store. "I heard rumors, but I didn't believe them. You, of all people, taking in a strange woman." "Margaret." Samuel's tone went flat. "Didn't realize you shopped here." "I shop everywhere, darling. It's how one keeps informed." Margaret's gaze raked over Clara, dismissive and thorough. "And who is this? Your new housekeeper?" "My name is Clara Whitmore." Clara forced her voice steady. "And yes, I'm helping with the household." Whitmore. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "That name sounds familiar." "Whitmore. Oh." Her face transformed with malicious delight. "Oh, you're that Whitmore. The widow of that thief they hanged in Yuma. Daniel Whitmore, wasn't it? Stole payroll and got himself strung up for it?" The store went silent. Clara felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. "My husband was innocent," she said through numb lips. "That's what they all say, dear." Margaret's smile was poison. "Samuel, really? First you let your wife die, and now you're bringing criminals into your home? What will people think?" Something snapped. Clara didn't see Samuel move. One second he was beside her. The next he was in Margaret's face, his voice low and dangerous. "You say one more word about my wife," he said, "and I will forget that I was raised to respect women. One more word." Margaret stepped back, genuine fear flickering in her eyes. "Well, I never—" "Clara is a guest in my home. She's done nothing wrong. And if anyone in this town has a problem with that, they can take it up with me directly. Are we clear?" Silence. "I asked if we were clear." "Crystal," Margaret whispered. Samuel turned to Mrs. Patterson. "We'll take those supplies now, and you can add them to my account." Nobody spoke as Clara helped load the wagon. Nobody spoke as they drove out of town. It wasn't until they were halfway home that Samuel finally broke the silence. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have warned you about Margaret Webb. Her husband's the territorial judge. She thinks that gives her the right to rule over everyone else." "Webb?" Clara's stomach dropped. "Judge Cornelius Webb? You've heard of him?" "He's the one who denied Daniel's appeal, said there wasn't enough evidence to reopen the case." Clara's hands clenched in her lap. He signed my husband's death warrant. Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Clara, don't. She shook her head. It doesn't change anything. Daniel's still dead. And now his wife is here, making trouble for the one person who's shown her any kindness. You're not making trouble. Margaret Webb would disagree. Margaret Webb can go to hell. The words startled a laugh out of Clara. Samuel glanced at her, surprise softening his features. That's the second time I've heard you laugh, he said. Sounds good. Don't get used to it. But she was smiling, just a little, just enough. The children knew something was wrong the moment they walked in. Pa looks mad, Billy whispered loudly to Emma. Like that time I accidentally set the barn on fire. You set the barn on fire? Just a little fire. It went out mostly by itself. Billy, shh, Jack cut in. Something happened in town. Samuel set down the supplies and turned to his children, his face grave. We need to talk. All of us. Sit down. They sat. Even Thomas, held on Jack's lap, seemed to sense the seriousness. There are people in town, Samuel began, who aren't happy that Clara is staying with us. They're going to say things, mean things. Some of it you might hear at school. Some of it you might hear from other children. What kind of things? Emma asked. Things that aren't true. Things about Clara, about me, about this family. But why? Billy's face scrunched up in confusion. Clara's nice. She makes good food. She made Rose talk again. Why would anyone be mean about that? Because some people are scared of what they don't understand. Samuel's voice was heavy. And some people are just mean because it makes them feel powerful. That's stupid, Billy declared. Yes, it is. Samuel looked at each of his children in turn. But I need you to understand something. No matter what anyone says, Clara is part of this household now. She's under our protection. And Thorntons protect their own. Understood? Yes, Pa, they chorused. Good. Now. Pa? Jack's voice was quiet, serious. Are you going to marry her? The question fell into the room like a stone into still water. Clara felt her face flush. Samuel went very still. That's not... We haven't... Because if you did, Jack continued, undeterred, she'd be our stepmother, legal-like, and nobody could say anything about her living here. Jack, I'm just saying. Tommy Harrison's pa married their housekeeper last year, and nobody makes fun of Tommy anymore. They had to stop because she was his real ma now, not just the help. Samuel rubbed his face with his hands. This isn't something you children need to worry about. But we do worry. Emma stood up, her small fists clenched. We worry about Clara leaving. We worry about people being mean. We worry about losing her like we lost Mama. You're not going to lose her. You don't know that, Emma's voice cracked. You said Mama would be fine too. You said the fever would break and she'd get better, and she didn't. Silence crashed down. Emma burst into tears and ran from the room. Jack went after her, Thomas still in his arms. Billy looked between Clara and Samuel, his face confused and scared. Did Emma just yell at Pa? He whispered. Go to your room, Billy, Samuel said quietly. But... Now. Billy went. Rose didn't move. She stayed in her corner, her dark eyes fixed on Clara. I should go talk to her, Clara said. No, Samuel shook his head. Give her time. She's not really angry at you. She's angry at... He trailed off, unable to finish. At death. At loss. At things she can't control. Yes. Clara stood slowly, her legs unsteady. Samuel, maybe Jack is right. He looked at her sharply. Not in the way he meant it. She took a breath. But if my presence here is going to cause problems for your family, for your children, maybe I should— Don't. His voice was fierce. Don't you dare finish that sentence. Samuel, I said don't. He crossed to her in 3 strides, stopping close enough that she could see the storm clouds gathering in his eyes. You want to know what my children would say if you left? You want to know what it would do to Rose, to Emma, to Billy, who hasn't stopped talking about you for a week? You want to know what it would do to me? I don't want to cause problems. You're not causing problems. The problems were here long before you showed up. His hands came up, hovered near her shoulders without touching. The problem is Margaret Webb and her husband, who've been trying to buy my land for 3 years. The problem is a town that decides a person's worth based on gossip. The problem is a world that punishes women for the crimes of their husbands. Then what's the solution? Samuel's jaw worked. His eyes searched her face, looking for something Clara couldn't name. Jack was right, he said finally. About what? About marriage. The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Samuel, hear me out. He stepped back, giving her space, giving her air. I'm not asking for romance, not asking for love. I'm asking for partnership, legal protection. The right to call yourself my wife so that nobody, not Margaret Webb, not the territorial judge, not anyone, can question your place in this house. That's not why people get married. It's why some people get married, and those marriages last longer than most. His voice softened. Clara, my children need a mother. I need someone who understands what it's like to lose everything and keep going anyway. I need someone who makes soup that doesn't taste like boots and who can get Rose to trust again. I need you. Clara's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. You don't know me. I know enough. I'm broken. So am I. I might never love you the way a wife should love a husband. Then we'll learn together. Or we won't, and we'll be partners instead. Either way, you'd be safe. The children would be happy. And maybe— He let out a breath. Maybe neither of us would have to be alone anymore. Clara looked at him, this quiet, steady man who'd pulled her from the snow and given her reasons to keep breathing. She thought about Daniel, about the love they'd shared, about the promises she'd made at his grave. She thought about Rose's small hand in hers, Emma's fierce intelligence, Billy's boundless chaos, Jack's 2 old eyes, Thomas's baby giggles. She thought about belonging somewhere, about not being alone. Yes, she said. Samuel blinked. Yes? Yes. I'll marry you. Clara's voice shook, but the words came out steady. Not for love, not yet, but for safety, for the children, for the chance to stop running. For a long moment, Samuel just stared at her. Then something shifted in his face. Relief, gratitude, and something else. Something that looked almost like hope. Thank you, he said roughly. Thank you. He reached out, took her hand in his. His grip was warm, calloused, real. We'll do it soon, he said, before Webb can cause more trouble, before the town has time to scheme. How soon? This weekend, if you're willing. Clara thought about her husband, dead 3 months. Thought about the rope she'd lost in the snow. Thought about all the reasons this was too fast, too sudden, too much. I'm willing, she said. She told Emma first. She found the girl in the loft of the barn, knees pulled to her chest, tears drying on her cheeks. Clara climbed up slowly, her healing feet protesting, and sat down beside her without speaking. They stayed like that for a long time. "I didn't mean to yell," Emma said finally. "I know Pa's doing his best." "He knows that too." Emma's voice cracked. "I can't lose anyone else. I can't." Clara put her arm around the girl's thin shoulders. "I'm not going anywhere, Emma. In fact," she took a breath, "your father asked me to marry him. I said yes." Emma went rigid. Then she pulled back, her eyes searching Clara's face. "Really? You're going to be our mother?" "Stepmother, legally," Clara smiled gently. "If you'll have me." "If we'll—" Emma threw her arms around Clara's neck, nearly knocking them both off the loft. "Yes, yes, we'll have you. Does Rose know? Does Billy? Oh God, Billy's going to lose his mind." "We're telling everyone at dinner."
Can I tell them, please? I want to see their faces.
"I think that's something your father and I should do together." Emma pulled back, her eyes bright with tears and joy. "You said, your father and I, like you're already part of the family." Clara's throat tightened. "I suppose I did." "Good." Emma wiped her eyes fiercely. "Because you are. You have been since Rose said your name. Maybe even before that." Dinner that night was chaos. Billy literally fell off his chair when Samuel made the announcement. Jack tried to look dignified, but couldn't stop grinning. Thomas clapped his hands, not understanding but picking up on the excitement. And Rose climbed into Clara's lap, pressed her face against Clara's shoulder, and whispered 3 words that made the whole room go silent. "Don't leave us." It was the first full sentence she'd spoken in 2 years. Clara held her tight, tears streaming down her face. "I won't. I promise. I'm not leaving." "Ever?" "Ever." Rose pulled back, her dark eyes searching Clara's face. Then, slowly, she nodded. And she smiled. A real smile, the first one Clara had seen. Samuel cleared his throat roughly. "Well, that's settled then." "When's the wedding?" Billy demanded. "Can I be the best man? Jack was best man at Tommy Harrison's pa's wedding, and he got to hold the rings and everything." "You'll drop the rings," Jack said. "I will not. You dropped Henrietta's egg this morning." "That was different." "Enough." But Samuel was smiling, really smiling, in a way Clara hadn't seen before. "We'll work out the details tomorrow. Tonight, we celebrate." "Celebrate how?" Billy asked suspiciously. "Please don't say dancing. Pa dances like a 3-legged mule." "I do not." "You really do, Pa," Emma confirmed. "I've taken notes." "You take notes on everything." "It's called scientific observation." Clara listened to them argue, these 5 fierce, broken, beautiful children. She watched Samuel try to maintain order while failing spectacularly. She felt Rose's warm weight in her lap, Emma's hand seeking hers under the table, and she thought, This is what I almost gave up." The thought was terrifying. It was also wonderful. That night, after everyone was asleep, Clara stood at her window and looked out at the snow-covered fields. The moon was full, casting everything in silver light. A soft knock came at her door. She opened it to find Samuel, still dressed, his face troubled. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Wanted to check on you." He stepped inside, careful to leave the door open. "This all happened fast. Too fast, maybe. If you're having second thoughts—" "I'm not." "You're sure?" Clara thought about it, really thought about it. "I'm not sure of anything," she admitted. "I'm not sure I won't want to give up again someday. I'm not sure I can be the mother your children need." I'm not sure any of this will work. That's honest. But I'm sure of one thing. She met his eyes. I'm sure that when I was in that snow, ready to die, 5 children appeared out of nowhere and decided I was worth saving. And I'm sure that means something. Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her hand, gentle and hesitant. They weren't wrong, he said. You are worth saving. You always were. Clara's eyes burned. You don't know that. I do, and I'm going to spend every day proving it to you, however long it takes. He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, chaste, respectful, but full of promise. Good night, Clara. Good night, Samuel. He left. Clara stood in the moonlight, her hand still warm where his lips had touched. Tomorrow, the town would hear about the wedding. Tomorrow, Margaret Webb would plot. Tomorrow, Judge Cornelius Webb would learn that the widow of the man he'd sentenced to death was marrying Samuel Thornton. Tomorrow, everything would get harder. But tonight, Clara allowed herself something she hadn't felt in 3 months. Hope. She was almost asleep when the sound came. A soft knock. Softer than Samuel's. She opened the door. Rose stood in the hallway, her rag doll clutched to her chest, her dark eyes enormous in the candlelight. Can't sleep, she whispered. Bad dreams. Clara's heart cracked open. Come here. She lifted Rose into her arms, carried her to the bed, tucked them both under the covers. Rose curled against her side, small and warm and trusting. Will you sing? Rose's voice was barely audible. Mama used to sing. Clara's throat closed. She hadn't sung since Daniel died, hadn't wanted to. But Rose was looking at her with such desperate hope, such naked need, that Clara couldn't refuse. She opened her mouth. The words came slowly at first, rusty from disuse. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. Rose's eyes drifted closed. Her breathing slowed. Her small hand gripped Clara's dress, holding on even in sleep. Clara sang until the candle burned low, sang until her voice gave out, sang until tears were streaming down her face and she couldn't tell anymore whether they were grief or gratitude. When morning came, Rose was still there, still holding on. And Clara realized, with terrifying certainty, that she would burn down the world before she let anyone take this child from her. She was done running, done giving up, done letting other people decide her worth. She was going to marry Samuel Thornton. She was going to become mother to 5 beautiful, broken children. And if Margaret Webb, or Judge Cornelius Webb, or the entire territory tried to stop her, they would learn exactly what a woman with nothing left to lose was capable of. If you or someone you know is having a difficult time, free support is available. Find resources. The wedding was small, simple, perfect. Clara wore a dress that had belonged to Samuel's first wife. The children had insisted, and Clara had agreed before she could overthink it. It was cream-colored cotton, yellowed with age, but still beautiful, and when she put it on, Rose had looked at her with something that wasn't quite recognition, but close to it. Pretty, Rose had whispered. Like Mama. Clara had cried. She wasn't ashamed of it. The circuit preacher came from 2 towns over, a weathered man named Reverend Hollis, who asked no questions and judged no answers. The witnesses were few. Old Moses, the blacksmith, who'd been kind when no one else would. The Patterson family, who'd quietly defied the town's whispers. And the 5 Thornton children, scrubbed clean and standing in a row like soldiers at attention. Do you, Samuel Thornton, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. And do you, Clara Whitmore, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Clara looked at Samuel, at his storm-gray eyes steady and sure. She looked at the children, Jack trying to look grown, Emma furiously scribbling notes, Billy bouncing on his heels, Thomas sucking his thumb in Jack's arms, and Rose, silent Rose, holding Clara's hand like she'd never let go. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." Samuel kissed her forehead, gentle, respectful. A promise, not a claim. And Clara Whitmore became Clara Thornton. The celebration was interrupted by hoofbeats. 3 riders appeared on the road, moving fast. Samuel's hand went to the rifle above the fireplace before he even turned around. "Stay inside," he said quietly. "All of you." "Pa," Jack started. "Inside, now." Clara pulled the children behind her, her heart hammering. Through the window, she watched Samuel step onto the porch, rifle in hand, as the riders came to a stop. She recognized Margaret Webb immediately. The woman sat side saddle, her face twisted with triumph. Beside her were 2 men, one wearing a marshal's badge, the other dressed in the fine clothes of someone who'd never done an honest day's work in his life. Judge Cornelius Webb. Clara would have known him anywhere. She'd memorized his face the day he'd signed Daniel's death warrant. "Samuel Thornton," the judge called out. "We need to speak." "Then speak." "Perhaps your wife should join us, seeing as this concerns her." Clara's blood turned to ice. Samuel glanced back at her through the window, a question in his eyes. She nodded, squared her shoulders, and walked outside. The judge's smile made her skin crawl. "Mrs. Thornton," he said, drawing out the name like poison. "Or should I say, Mrs. Whitmore? It seems there's been some confusion about your status." "My status is clear. I'm Samuel Thornton's wife. We were married not an hour ago." "So I've heard, and in such a hurry, too. One might wonder why." Margaret leaned forward, her eyes bright with malice. "One might also wonder if a marriage performed by a circuit preacher, with no proper banns read, no announcement to the community, is even legal at all." "It's legal," Samuel said flatly. "I've got the license to prove it." "Licenses can be challenged." Judge Webb's voice was smooth, reasonable, terrifying. "Especially when one of the parties is, shall we say, not who they claim to be." Clara's stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about your husband, Mrs. Thornton, Daniel Whitmore, convicted thief, hanged for his crimes." Webb paused, letting the words sink in. "I'm talking about the fact that you are the widow of an executed criminal, and you've somehow managed to worm your way into a respectable household. Daniel was innocent." The court disagreed. "The court was wrong." Clara's voice shook with fury. "You signed his death warrant without even reading the evidence. You took the word of the man who actually committed the crime, and you killed my husband for it." Webb's face darkened. "Be very careful, Mrs. Thornton. Accusations like that could be considered slander." "It's only slander if it's not true." Samuel stepped forward, putting himself between Clara and the riders. "You've said your piece, Webb. Now get off my land." "I'm afraid it's not that simple." Webb reached into his coat and produced a folded document. "This is a court order. Based on concerns raised by upstanding members of this community, I am hereby opening an investigation into the suitability of this household for child rearing." The world tilted. "You can't do that," Clara whispered. "I can, and I have." Webb's smile was cruel. "You see, Mrs. Thornton, when a woman of questionable character takes up residence with 5 impressionable children, The court has an obligation to ensure those children are safe. This investigation will determine whether Mr. Thornton is fit to retain custody. "Those are my children," Samuel growled. "You have no right." "I have every right. I'm the territorial judge. My word is law." Webb handed the document to the marshal. "You have 30 days to prove your household meets community standards. If you fail, the children will be placed with a more suitable family." "What family?" Clara demanded. "Yours?" Webb didn't answer. He didn't have to. Margaret laughed, a bright, brittle sound. "Come along, Cornelius. I think we've made our point." They turned their horses and rode away, leaving Clara and Samuel standing in the ruins of their wedding day. Behind them, Emma started to cry. The next 30 days were war. Webb's investigation meant visitors at all hours, inspectors checking the house for cleanliness, interviews with neighbors who suddenly couldn't remember ever seeing the Thornton children happy, questions designed to trap, to twist, to prove that Clara was exactly what they said she was. "How long have you known Mr. Thornton?" 2 weeks. "And in that time, you've taken complete control of his household?" "I help with the children, that's all." "That's not what we've heard. We've heard you've replaced their mother." Clara wanted to scream, wanted to tear the investigator's smug face apart with her bare hands. Instead, she smiled, answered politely, and died a little more inside with every question. The worst part was watching the children suffer. Billy came home from school with a black eye and wouldn't say how he got it. Emma stopped raising her hand in class because the other children laughed every time she spoke. Jack got into 3 fights in 1 week and was threatened with expulsion. And Rose stopped talking again. "She was doing so well," Clara told Samuel, her voice breaking. "She was coming back to us, and now she's scared." Samuel's face was carved from stone. "They're all scared, and there's nothing I can do about it." "There has to be something, some way to fight this." "Fight what? Webb owns this territory. His wife controls the town. Every door we knock on closes in our faces. Every friend we had has disappeared. We're alone, Clara, completely alone." "Then we fight alone." Samuel looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted in his eyes. "You don't give up, do you?" "I've tried giving up. It didn't work." Despite everything, he almost smiled. "No, I reckon it didn't." The fever hit on day 23. Thomas woke up burning, his small body shaking with chills, his cries weak and pitiful. Clara held him all night, sponging his forehead with cool water, singing the songs that used to soothe Rose. "It's croup," Samuel said, his face gray with fear. "Same thing that took—" He couldn't finish. "Same thing that took Sarah," Clara finished for him. "I know." "We need a doctor." "Doc Hartley won't come. He's on the Webb's payroll." "Then I'll make him come." Samuel grabbed his coat. "I'll drag him here by his throat if I have to." "Samuel." "That's my son, Clara. My baby boy." His voice cracked. "I can't lose him. I can't lose anyone else." He was gone before she could stop him. Clara held Thomas closer, feeling his tiny heart race, feeling his breath come in shallow gasps. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Stay with me, little one. Your papa's getting help. Just hold on." Thomas's eyes fluttered open. He looked at her, really looked at her, and whispered something that shattered her heart. "Mama?" It was the first time he'd called her that. Clara burst into tears. Samuel came back empty-handed. "Hartley wouldn't come," he said, his voice dead. "Said he couldn't risk his practice for a family under investigation. Said if Thomas died, it would be God's will. God's will. Clara's fury was cold, sharp, deadly. God's will that a 2-year-old dies because adults can't stop playing politics? Clara, no, no. She stood up, handed Thomas to Emma. Watch your brother. Keep him cool. I'll be back. Where are you going? To get help. She didn't wait for an answer. She grabbed her coat, walked out into the freezing night, and started toward town. Old Moses found her halfway there. Mrs. Thornton, his voice cut through the darkness. You shouldn't be out here alone. Thomas is sick. Doc Hartley won't come. I know what you need. Moses stepped closer, his weathered face full of concern. And I know someone who can help. But you ain't gonna like it. I don't care if I like it. I care if it works. Moses nodded slowly. Follow me. He led her through back alleys and side streets, away from the main road, away from watching eyes. They stopped at a small cabin on the edge of town, barely more than a shack. Who lives here? Clara asked. Someone the town forgot about. Moses knocked on the door. Someone who knows more about medicine than Doc Hartley ever will. The door opened. An old woman stood there, her face lined with years, her eyes sharp as broken glass. Clara Thornton, the woman said. I've been expecting you. Her name was Ruth. She'd been the town midwife 40 years ago, before Hartley arrived with his fancy degree and his expensive instruments. She'd delivered half the babies in the territory, saved more lives than she could count, and been pushed out when Progress decided she wasn't needed anymore. The Thornton boy, Ruth said as she gathered supplies. Croup, you say? Yes, he's burning up, can barely breathe. I know. I heard him coughing 3 days ago when I passed your place. Ruth shoved bottles and packets into a bag. Should have come sooner. I didn't know you existed. Nobody does. That's how they like it. Ruth handed Clara the bag. Steam, hot water, towels over his head. Make him breathe the moisture. This tincture, 3 drops every 4 hours. And this. She pressed a small jar into Clara's hand. Rub it on his chest. It'll help open his lungs. Will it work? Ruth's eyes met hers, steady and honest. I don't make promises, but I've never lost a baby to croup yet. Clara's knees almost buckled with relief. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when he's breathing easy. Ruth paused at the door. And Mrs. Thornton, you might want to know something. What? Judge Webb's first wife died of croup 30 years ago. He blamed the midwife who couldn't save her. Ruth's smile was bitter. That midwife was me. He's been punishing this town ever since. Clara stared at her. That's why he hates anything he can't control. Why he destroys anyone who reminds him of his own helplessness. Ruth opened the door. Now go. Save that baby. And when this is over, give Webb something to really be afraid of. Thomas's fever broke on day 25. Clara had stayed awake for 48 hours straight, steaming the room, applying the salve, counting drops of tincture. Samuel had worked beside her, neither of them speaking, neither of them sleeping, united in terror and determination. When Thomas finally opened his eyes and asked for milk, Clara collapsed against Samuel's chest and sobbed. You did it, Samuel whispered into her hair. You saved him. Ruth saved him. I just followed instructions. You walked into a frozen night with no plan and no backup because my son needed help. That's not following instructions. That's being a mother. Clara pulled back, looked at him through tear-blurred eyes. I'm not. You are. You have been since the day Rose said your name. Since the day Billy decided you were his discovery. Since the day Jack stopped pretending he didn't need anyone. Samuel cupped her face in his hands. You're their mother, Clara. You're my wife. And I will burn this whole territory down before I let anyone take you away from us. She kissed him. Not on the forehead, not on the cheek, on the mouth, hard and desperate and full of everything she'd been afraid to feel. Samuel froze for one heartbeat. Then his arms came around her, and he kissed her back with 2 years of loneliness and grief and hope. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara whispered, I think I might be falling in love with you. Good, Samuel said roughly, because I've been in love with you since you made soup that didn't taste like boots. Despite everything, the sick baby, the investigation, the war they were losing, Clara laughed. Day 29. The hearing was held in the town hall, every seat filled with people who'd come to watch the Thorntons fall. Judge Webb presided, his face a mask of false impartiality. Margaret sat in the front row, her smile sharp enough to cut. This hearing will determine whether Samuel Thornton is fit to retain custody of his 5 minor children, Webb announced. Given the concerns raised about his recent marriage to a woman of questionable character, the court must consider the children's best interests. Samuel stood, his jaw tight. May I speak, Your Honor? You may. I've raised these children for 2 years, by myself, after their mother died in my arms. I've fed them, clothed them, taught them, loved them. And now you want to take them away, because my wife's first husband was falsely convicted of a crime he didn't commit? The conviction stands, Mr. Thornton. The conviction is wrong, and you know it. Webb's eyes narrowed. Be careful. I'm done being careful. Samuel stepped forward, his voice rising. Everyone in this room knows what this is really about. It's not about my children. It's not about Clara. It's about my land. My water, the only source in this valley that doesn't dry up in summer. You've been trying to take it from me for 3 years, and you'll use any excuse, including destroying my family, to get it. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Webb's face went red. That is a serious accusation, Mr. Thornton. It's the truth, and I can prove it. He reached into his coat and pulled out a sheaf of papers. These are land records, loan documents, letters from every family you've driven off their property in the last decade. The Hendersons, the Mullenses, the Carpenter widow and her 3 children. Samuel threw the papers on the judge's table. You didn't just want their land, Webb. You took it, through fraud, intimidation, and abuse of power. The crowd erupted. Webb slammed his gavel. Order! Order! And this, Samuel pulled out one more document. This is a letter from the territorial governor. I sent him everything a week ago. He's opening his own investigation. Into you. Webb's face went white. You think you're the only one with power? Samuel's voice was deadly quiet. You think you can threaten my family, and I'll just roll over? I've been preparing for this fight since the day you first tried to steal my land. And I will not back down. Margaret stood up, her composure cracking. Cornelius, do something! Sit down, Margaret. But he's... I said sit down. The room went silent. Webb stared at Samuel, and for the first time, Clara saw fear in his eyes. This hearing is postponed, Webb said finally. Indefinitely. Pending further review. That's not good enough. Clara stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. I want it dismissed. Completely. I want it on record that there was never any legitimate concern about this family. And I want an apology. Webb laughed, incredulous. You want an apology? From me? You signed my husband's death warrant. You sent an innocent man to the gallows. And then you tried to destroy my new family because I dared to survive. Clara walked toward the judge's table, her eyes never leaving his. "I don't expect justice from you, Judge Webb. But I expect everyone in this room to see exactly what you are." She turned to face the crowd. "My husband, Daniel Whitmore, was innocent. The real thief was the mine foreman, who framed him to cover his own crimes. I have proof. Witnesses who were too scared to come forward. Documents that were buried. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure the truth comes out." "Clara," Samuel started. "I'm not finished." Clara's voice shook, but she didn't stop. "2 years ago, Judge Webb lost his first wife to croup. He blamed the midwife who tried to save her, a woman named Ruth, who lives in a shack on the edge of town, because this man destroyed her reputation. Since then, he's been punishing everyone he can't control. Everyone who reminds him of his own helplessness." Webb stood up so fast, his chair fell over. "How dare you?" "I dare, because I have nothing left to lose." Clara met his eyes, unflinching. "You took my husband. You tried to take my children. You tried to take everything that matters to me. But you failed. And you will keep failing. Because people like you only have power when the rest of us are too scared to fight back." She turned and walked back to Samuel, who was staring at her like he'd never seen her before. "We're done here," she said quietly. "Take me home." They walked out together, Samuel, Clara, and all 5 children. The crowd parted around them, some faces hostile, some shocked, some thoughtful. Old Moses was waiting outside. So was Ruth. So were a handful of others who'd been too scared to support them publicly. "That was something," Moses said, his weathered face breaking into a rare smile. "That was necessary," Clara replied. "This town has been afraid of the Webbs for too long. Someone had to say what everyone was thinking." "You might have just painted a target on your back." "The target was already there. At least now I'm shooting back." Samuel put his arm around her, and Clara leaned into him, exhausted and terrified, and more alive than she'd felt in months. "What happens now?" Emma asked quietly. "Now we go home," Samuel said, "and we wait." "Wait for what?" "For them to make their next move. Or—" He looked at the documents in his hand, the letter from the governor. "For them to realize they've already lost." The next morning, Clara woke to find Rose standing by her bed. "Mama?" Clara sat up, her heart pounding. "Yes, baby?" Rose climbed up beside her, her small face serious. "Bad man go away now?" "I don't know, sweetheart. I hope so." "If he comes back," Rose said, "I tell him go away. Use my words." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "You're talking again." "I had to. You needed help." Rose snuggled against her side. "That's what family does." Clara held her tight, these 5 broken children who had put her back together. Whatever came next, they would face it together, and God help anyone who tried to tear them apart. 3 days passed in tense silence. No riders came. No investigators appeared. No summons arrived from the court. The Thornton household held its breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "Maybe it's over," Emma said on the 3rd morning, her voice hopeful but uncertain. "Maybe Judge Webb gave up." "Men like Webb don't give up," Samuel replied, his eyes on the road. "They regroup." Clara knew he was right. She'd seen the look in Webb's eyes when she'd walked out of that hearing. Not defeat, but calculation. He was planning something. She just didn't know what. The answer came on the 4th day. Clara was hanging laundry when she heard hoofbeats. Her hands stilled on the clothesline, her heart hammering. But when she turned, it wasn't Webb's men she saw. It was Mrs. Patterson from the general store. Alone, riding hard. "Mrs. Thornton!" The woman pulled up sharply, nearly falling from her horse. Mrs. Thornton, you have to come, now. What happened? It's the judge. He's called a town meeting. Everyone's there. He's saying things, terrible things, about your husband, about Daniel. Clara's blood went cold. What kind of things? He's got documents. Says he found proof that Daniel really was guilty. Says you've been lying to everyone, that you knew all along. Mrs. Patterson's face was pale. He's calling for a vote, to run you out of the territory. Clara didn't think. She dropped the laundry and ran. The town hall was packed. Clara pushed through the crowd, ignoring the whispers, the pointing fingers, the hostile stares. Samuel was already inside, standing near the front, his face carved from granite. Judge Webb stood at the podium, papers in hand, playing to the crowd like a revival preacher. Evidence that Daniel Whitmore confessed to his crimes before his execution. A signed statement in his own hand admitting his guilt. That's a lie! Every head turned. Clara pushed her way to the front, her chest heaving, her eyes blazing. My husband never confessed to anything. He went to the gallows swearing his innocence. I was there. Webb's smile was poisonous. Ah, Mrs. Thornton, how good of you to join us. Perhaps you'd like to explain this? He held up a piece of paper. Clara recognized Daniel's handwriting immediately. She'd memorized every curve of his letters during the long nights after his death. But the words weren't his. That's a forgery, she said, her voice shaking with rage. Daniel never wrote that. I'm afraid the handwriting experts disagree. This document was authenticated by 3 separate authorities. Your husband confessed, Mrs. Thornton. He admitted to stealing the payroll. He admitted to lying to you. He admitted to everything. No! Clara's voice cracked. No, that's not true. That's not... The evidence speaks for itself. Webb turned back to the crowd. This woman has deceived us all. She came to our town with lies on her lips and manipulation in her heart. She preyed on a grieving widower and his innocent children. And now she stands before you, continuing to lie, even when confronted with proof. Where did you get that document? Samuel stepped forward, his voice dangerous. I know every piece of evidence from Daniel's trial. That paper was never presented. It was discovered recently. Among the mine foreman's personal effects. The foreman who actually committed the crime? Webb's face flickered. The foreman who was wrongfully accused by Mrs. Thornton in a desperate attempt to clear her husband's name. That foreman died 6 months ago, Samuel pressed. Convenient timing for evidence to suddenly appear? Are you accusing me of fabrication, Mr. Thornton? I'm accusing you of being a lying, scheming snake who'll do anything to get what he wants. The crowd erupted. Webb slammed his gavel, shouting for order. Clara stood frozen, her mind racing. The foreman was dead. He'd died of fever in New Mexico, according to the letters she'd received. She'd mourned the fact that he'd escaped justice, that he'd never been held accountable for Daniel's death. But now his effects were being used to destroy her. Again. Wait, a voice cut through the chaos, quiet but firm. Everyone turned. Old Moses stood in the doorway, his weathered face unreadable. But he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a young man Clara had never seen. Thin, nervous, clutching a leather satchel like his life depended on it. Who is this? Webb demanded. This is Thomas Reed, Moses said. He was the foreman's clerk at the Yuma mine. He's got something to say. The young man stepped forward, his Adam's apple bobbing. I worked for Mr. Harrison, the foreman. I kept his records, filed his papers, handled his correspondence. And what does that have to do with anything? Reed reached into his satchel and pulled out a bundle of documents. Because I know for a fact that Daniel Whitmore never wrote any confession. I know because Mr. Harrison made me forge it. The room went dead silent. He made me practice Mr. Whitmore's handwriting for weeks, Reed continued, his voice gaining strength. He had samples from the mine's employment records. He said it was for legal purposes, but I knew it was wrong. Webb's face went gray. This is preposterous. This man is clearly lying to... I've got proof. Reed held up the documents. Practice sheets, in my own hand, showing how I learned to copy Whitmore's writing. And letters from Mr. Harrison ordering me to create the confession after the execution. He was going to use it if anyone ever questioned the verdict. Why didn't you come forward before? Someone in the crowd shouted. Because I was scared. Reed's eyes found Clara's. Mr. Harrison threatened my family, said he'd have us all killed if I talked. But when he died, and when I heard what was happening here, he took a breath. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Daniel Whitmore was innocent. I've known it for 3 years, and I'm not going to let his widow be destroyed for telling the truth. Clara couldn't breathe, couldn't think. 3 years of grief, of guilt, of wondering if somehow she'd missed something, and now this. Proof. Real proof. This changes nothing, Webb snarled. This man could be lying. He could be working with the Thorntons too. That's enough, Cornelius. A new voice. A woman's voice. Margaret Webb stepped through the crowd, her face pale, her hands trembling. But her eyes were clear for the first time since Clara had met her. Margaret? Webb stared at his wife. What are you doing? What I should have done years ago. Margaret turned to face the crowd. Everything that man just said is true. My husband has been fabricating evidence for decades. Against the Thorntons. Against Ruth, the midwife. Against anyone who stood in his way. Margaret, stop! I will not stop, Margaret's voice rose. I've watched you destroy families. I've watched you steal land. I've watched you twist the law to serve your greed. And I said nothing, because I was afraid of you. She looked at Clara. But this woman stood up in front of everyone and told the truth, even knowing what it would cost her. If she can be brave, so can I. You don't know what you're saying, Webb hissed. You're hysterical. You need to... I know exactly what I'm saying, and I have proof, too. Margaret pulled a key from her pocket. The safe in your office. The one you think I don't know about. It's full of documents. Land deeds you've stolen. Testimonies you've forged. Evidence of every crime you've committed since we came to this territory. Webb lunged for her. Samuel intercepted him, catching his arm, twisting it behind his back. Don't even think about it, Samuel growled. Get your hands off me. I'm a judge. I'll have you arrested for... For what? Stopping you from assaulting your wife? Samuel shoved him toward the marshal, who'd been standing in shocked silence. Do your job, Pike. Arrest this man. Pike hesitated. I can't just... I'll make it easy for you. Margaret stepped forward. Cornelius Webb, I'm filing formal charges against you for fraud, forgery, abuse of power, and conspiracy to murder. That's right. Murder. Because Daniel Whitmore wouldn't have died if you'd done your job properly. His blood is on your hands. Webb's face contorted. You'll regret this. Both of you. All of you. You'll what? Clara's voice was quiet, but carried across the room. Destroy us? You already tried. Fabricate evidence? We just proved you do that. Take our children. The whole town just heard your wife admit you're a criminal. She walked toward him, this man who had haunted her nightmares for 3 years, who had signed away her husband's life, who had tried to take everything she loved. You have no power anymore, Judge Webb. You have nothing. Webb stared at her, his eyes wild. You think this is over? You think you've won? I still have friends. I still have connections. You'll go to prison." The new voice came from the doorway. A man in a federal marshal's uniform stepped inside, followed by 3 deputies. "Cornelius Webb, you're under arrest by order of the territorial governor. Please come quietly." For a long moment, Webb didn't move. Then, slowly, the fight drained out of him. His shoulders slumped. His face went slack. "It was just business," he muttered as the deputies approached. "It was all just business." "Tell that to Daniel Whitmore," Clara said. They led him away. The crowd parted in silence, watching the man who had ruled their lives for decades being escorted out in chains. Margaret Webb stood alone in the middle of the room, shaking. Clara walked toward her. "Why?" Clara asked softly. "Why help us, after everything?" Margaret's eyes glistened. "Because you reminded me of someone I used to be, before I married him, before I forgot how to fight." She touched Clara's arm. "I'm sorry for everything. I know it doesn't change what happened, but it changes everything." Clara took her hand. "You just gave me back my husband's name. You gave my children a mother they can be proud of. That matters." Margaret burst into tears. Clara held her. This woman who had been her enemy, who had tried to destroy her, and let her cry. Because Clara understood better than anyone what it cost to break free. The ride home was quiet. Samuel drove the wagon, Clara beside him, the children packed in the back. Nobody spoke. The weight of what had happened, what had changed, pressed down on all of them. Finally, Billy broke the silence. "So, we won?" "We won," Samuel confirmed. "And the bad man's going to prison?" "Yes." "And Clara's staying forever?" Clara turned around, looking at 5 hopeful faces. "Yes, forever." Billy whooped so loudly that Thomas started crying. Jack tried to shush him, while Emma furiously scribbled notes. Rose climbed over the seat and settled in Clara's lap, her small arms wrapping around Clara's neck. "Mama," she whispered, "we won." "We did, baby. We did." That night, after the children were asleep, Clara found Samuel on the porch, the same place where they'd had so many of their most important conversations, the same place where she'd agreed to marry him. She sat down beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Thomas Reed," she said quietly. "The clerk. How did Moses find him?" "He didn't." Samuel turned to look at her. "I've been looking for witnesses since before you arrived. Sent letters to everyone who worked at that mine. Reed finally wrote back 3 weeks ago, but he was too scared to come forward. When Moses told him what was happening, that you were fighting, he decided to be brave. Because of you. Because you showed him it was possible." Clara shook her head. "I didn't do anything special. I just refused to give up." "That is special. Don't you understand that?" Samuel took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "You walked through fire, Clara, literally and figuratively, and you came out the other side still fighting. That's not ordinary. That's extraordinary." Clara's throat tightened. "I almost didn't. I almost gave up. If your children hadn't found me in that snow." "But they did. And you stayed, and you saved this family." Samuel lifted their joined hands, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "You saved me." "I think we saved each other." "Maybe." His smile was soft, rare. "Or maybe God knew exactly what he was doing when he put you in our path." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. "I don't know if I believe in God anymore. Not after everything." "That's all right. I believe enough for both of us." They sat in silence for a long time, watching the stars, breathing in the cold night air. Clara thought about Daniel, about the man she'd loved, the life they'd planned, the future that had been stolen from them. But she also thought about Samuel, about the life they were building, about the future that was just beginning.
"I love you," she said quietly. The first time she'd said it without qualification. Samuel went still. "Clara, I know we got married for practical reasons. I know this started as protection, partnership, survival. But somewhere along the way," she looked up at him, her heart pounding. "Somewhere along the way, it became real. You became real. This family became real. And I love you. All of you." Samuel's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized she'd shed. "I've loved you since the day you made soup that didn't taste like boots," he said, his voice rough. "I've loved you since Rose said your name, since you held Thomas through his fever, since you stood up in front of that whole town and demanded to be seen." "You never said anything." "I was scared. Scared you'd leave. Scared you'd realize you could do better than a broken widower with 5 wild children and a farm that barely breaks even." Clara laughed through her tears.
"Samuel Thornton, you ridiculous man. There is no better. This is better. You are better." He kissed her, really kissed her, with all the passion and tenderness he'd been holding back. Clara melted into him, feeling the last of her walls crumble. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he whispered. "Not because you have to, not because it's safe. Stay because this is home." "I'm not going anywhere," Clara promised. "This is home. You are home." The morning brought visitors, not enemies this time, friends, neighbors, people who'd been too scared to support them publicly, now showing up with casseroles and apologies and offers of help. Mrs. Patterson brought fabric for new dresses and a basket of fresh eggs. "I'm sorry," she said, her eyes red. "I should have stood up sooner. I should have—" "You're here now," Clara said. "That's what matters." Old Moses arrived with a new plow blade he'd forged himself. "Figured you'd need it come spring. That old one's about rusted through." "I can't afford—" "Didn't ask you to pay." Moses pressed the blade into Samuel's hands. "Consider it a wedding gift. Late, but heartfelt." Ruth, the midwife, came too, checking on Thomas, pronouncing him fully recovered. "Boy's got his mother's stubbornness," she said, and it took Clara a moment to realize Ruth meant her. Even Miss Patterson, the school teacher, stopped by. "The children can return to school whenever they're ready," she said. "And I've spoken to the other students about appropriate behavior. There won't be any more incidents." "Thank you," Clara said. "No, Mrs. Thornton. Thank you." Miss Patterson's eyes were fierce behind her glasses. "You showed this whole town that bullies only win if we let them. My students needed to see that. We all did." By noon, the house was full of people Clara had thought were enemies, all of them trying to make amends. The children ran wild through the chaos, deliriously happy. Even Rose was chattering away, showing off her doll to anyone who would listen. Clara stood in the middle of it all, overwhelmed. Samuel found her in the kitchen, hiding behind a stack of donated pies. "Too much?" he asked. "A little," Clara laughed shakily. "A week ago, this town wanted to run me out. Now they're bringing me pie. People are complicated. They do the wrong thing for a long time, and then one day, they wake up and try to do the right thing." Samuel pulled her into his arms. "Doesn't make them saints, but it makes them human. I don't know how to be a community. I've been running so long, I forgot what it felt like to stay in one place." "Then we'll learn together." Samuel kissed her forehead. "One day at a time. That's all any of us can do." That evening, after everyone had finally gone home and the children were asleep, Clara sat down at the kitchen table with a pen and paper. "What are you doing?" Samuel asked. "Writing a letter to Daniel's mother," Samuel went still. I didn't know he had family. A mother in Ohio. We lost touch after the trial. She believed the verdict, believed her son was a thief. Clara's voice cracked. I couldn't face her, couldn't stand the thought of her thinking that about him. But now you can tell her the truth. Now I can give her back her son. Clara looked up, tears streaming down her face. He was innocent, Samuel. I always knew it, but now the whole world knows. His name is clear, his memory is restored. And his mother? She deserves to know that. She deserves to mourn the son he really was, not the criminal they made him out to be. Samuel sat down beside her, his hand covering hers. Do you want help? I could... No, this is something I need to do myself. Clara wiped her eyes. But will you stay with me while I write? I'm not going anywhere. She wrote through the night, pages and pages, telling Daniel's mother everything. The truth about the foreman, the forged confession, the 3 years of running, and finally, the vindication. She told her about Samuel and the children, about the new life she was building, about the love she'd found when she thought love was impossible. And at the very end, she wrote, Daniel loved you more than anything. He talked about you constantly, about the farm where he grew up, about the way you used to sing while you made breakfast. He would want you to know that he died an innocent man. He would want you to know that his wife never stopped fighting for the truth. And he would want you to know that you're a grandmother now, to 5 beautiful children who have heard stories about him and know that courage runs in their blood. Your son was a hero, Mrs. Whitmore. I hope you can finally be proud of him. When she finished, Clara sealed the letter and sat back, exhausted and empty, and strangely at peace. It's done, she said. How do you feel? Like I finally said goodbye. Clara looked at Samuel, at this man who had given her a second chance at everything. Like I'm finally ready to move forward. Samuel smiled. Then let's move forward. Together. The next morning, Rose woke Clara up by jumping on the bed. Mama, Mama, wake up! There's something outside! Clara stumbled out of bed, her heart racing. After everything they'd been through, her first instinct was still fear, still danger. But when she reached the window, she stopped, stared, felt her jaw drop. The entire town was gathered in their front yard, not with pitchforks and accusations, with lumber, with tools, with paint and fabric, and enough food to feed an army. What is this? Clara breathed. Samuel appeared beside her, equally stunned. I have no idea. They went outside together, the children tumbling after them. Old Moses stepped forward, a hammer in his hand and a grin on his face. Heard your barn needs a new roof, he said, and your fence could use some repair. And that chicken coop Billy's been building might actually stay standing if someone helped him do it right. We didn't ask for, Samuel started. You didn't have to. Mrs. Patterson stepped forward. You've given this town something, Mr. Thornton. You and your wife. You showed us what courage looks like, what family looks like, what fighting for what's right looks like. She gestured at the crowd. Consider this our thank you. Clara's eyes burned. I don't know what to say. Say you'll let us help, Moses replied. Say you'll let us be neighbors, real neighbors, the kind we should have been all along. Clara looked at Samuel. He looked at her. And then, together, they started to laugh. Well, Samuel said finally, I suppose we could use a new barn roof. The crowd cheered. And then they got to work, dozens of people, building and hammering and painting, transforming the Thornton homestead into something stronger, better, more beautiful than it had ever been. Clara worked beside them, passing tools, holding boards, making coffee for anyone who wanted it. The children raced through the chaos, getting in the way and being useful in equal measure. And at some point during that long, extraordinary day, Clara realized something. She wasn't just staying anymore. She wasn't just surviving. She was home. For the first time in 3 years, she was truly, completely home. Spring came slowly to Copper Ridge. The snow melted in patches, revealing brown grass and muddy roads and the first stubborn crocuses pushing through the frozen ground. Clara watched the transformation from the kitchen window, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. 3 months since the hearing. 3 months since Judge Webb had been led away in chains. 3 months since the town had gathered in her yard and rebuilt not just her barn, but her faith in humanity. And still, some mornings, she woke up expecting it all to be a dream. "Mama?" Clara turned. Rose stood in the doorway, her dark hair tangled from sleep, her rag doll clutched to her chest. She'd been talking for months now, full sentences, questions, opinions, but Clara still felt a jolt of wonder every time that small voice said, "Mama." "What is it, sweetheart?" "My tummy feels funny." Clara set down her coffee and crouched to Rose's level. "Funny how? Does it hurt?" "No, it feels—" Rose scrunched up her face, searching for words. "Fluttery, like butterflies." "Are you nervous about something?" "Today's the day," Rose whispered. "The special day." Clara's heart squeezed. "You remembered. Emma said it's the day you came to us, the anniversary. She's been counting." Of course Emma had been counting. Emma counted everything. "That's right. 1 year ago today, you found me in the snow." Rose reached up and touched Clara's cheek. "You were so cold. I was scared you'd go to heaven like Mama." "But I didn't." "No." Rose smiled, and it was like watching sunrise. "You stayed. You're our Mama now." Clara pulled her close, breathing in the smell of little girl hair and sleep and home. "I'm your Mama now, forever. Promise?" Promise. The celebration was Emma's idea. She'd been planning it for weeks. A family dinner to mark the anniversary, with Clara's favorite foods and decorations made by the children, and what Billy called the biggest cake in the whole territory. "It's not actually the biggest," Emma informed him. "I did the calculations. It would need to be approximately 47 feet in diameter to qualify as the largest, and our oven is only—" "Emma, it's an expression." "Expressions should be accurate." "You're impossible." "I'm precise. There's a difference." Clara listened to them bicker and felt her chest fill with something she'd almost forgotten existed. Joy. Simple, uncomplicated joy. "You're smiling." She turned to find Samuel watching her from the doorway, his arms crossed, his own smile barely contained. "I'm happy," she said, and the words felt strange in her mouth. Foreign, like a language she was only just relearning. "Good." Samuel crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. "You deserve to be happy, after everything." "So do you." "I am." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "I've got a good woman, 5 healthy children, a farm that's finally turning a profit. What more could a man want?" Clara hesitated. There was something she needed to tell him, something she'd been holding on to for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. Maybe now was that moment. "Samuel." "PA!" Billy's voice echoed from outside. "PA, come quick!" Samuel's head snapped up. Clara's heart lurched. After everything they'd been through, sudden summons still triggered fear. They ran outside together. Billy was standing by the fence, pointing at the road. "Look! Someone's coming!" A wagon was approaching, moving slowly. As it got closer, Clara could make out two figures, a man driving and an older woman sitting beside him. "Who is that?" Emma asked, emerging from the house with Thomas on her hip. Clara's breath caught. She knew that face. Even from a distance, even after years, she knew. "Oh my God." "Clara?" Samuel's hand found her elbow. "What is it?" "That's—" Her voice broke. "That's Daniel's mother." Mrs. Whitmore, Sarah, had aged 20 years in the 3 since Clara had last seen her. Her hair had gone completely white. Her face was lined with grief and exhaustion. But her eyes, Daniel's eyes, the same warm brown, were alive with something Clara hadn't expected. Hope. "Clara." Sarah's voice trembled as she descended from the wagon. "Oh, Clara." Clara didn't remember moving. One moment she was standing by the fence, the next she was in Sarah's arms, both of them crying, years of separation and misunderstanding washing away in tears. "I got your letter," Sarah sobbed. "I read it and I couldn't. I had to come. I had to see you. I had to—" "I know. I know." Clara held her tighter. "I should have written sooner. I should have—" "No, don't apologize." Sarah pulled back, cupped Clara's face in her weathered hands. "I'm the one who should apologize. I believed them. I believed the court, the newspapers, all of it. I thought my son was a thief. I thought you must have known." "You had no reason to trust me." "I had every reason. You loved him. You stood by him. And I turned my back on you when you needed me most." Sarah's voice cracked. "Can you ever forgive me?" Clara's throat was so tight she could barely speak. "There's nothing to forgive. You're here now. That's what matters." They moved inside, away from the curious eyes of the children, who'd been watching the reunion with varying degrees of fascination. "That's Pa's mother-in-law?" Billy asked Jack, in what he probably thought was a whisper. "No, dummy. That's Clara's mother-in-law. From before." "Clara had a before?" "Everyone has a before." "Not me. I was born this way." "That's not what—" "Never mind." Samuel shepherded the children outside, giving Clara and Sarah privacy. Clara was grateful. There was so much to say, so many years to bridge. They sat at the kitchen table, hands clasped, and Sarah told her story. "After Daniel died, I couldn't face it. Couldn't face the shame of having a son who was a criminal. So I pretended he'd never existed. Packed away his pictures, stopped saying his name." Sarah's voice shook. "I was a coward." "You were grieving." "I was afraid of what people would think, of what it meant about me as a mother, that I'd raised a thief." She laughed bitterly. "And all along he was innocent. My good, honest boy was innocent, and I let him die, thinking I'd abandoned him." "He knew you loved him," Clara said. "He talked about you constantly, about the farm, about your singing, about how you used to read to him before bed. He knew." Sarah broke down. Clara held her while she cried, while years of guilt and grief poured out. "When your letter came," Sarah finally managed, "I felt like I could breathe for the first time in 3 years. Like a weight had been lifted. My son wasn't a criminal. My son was a hero who died trying to expose corruption, and his wife, his wonderful, brave wife, never stopped fighting for him." "I almost did," Clara admitted. "I almost gave up, more than once." "But you didn't. That's what matters." Sarah gripped her hands. "Clara, I need to ask you something." "Anything." "The children, your new family." Sarah's eyes searched hers. "Do they know about Daniel? Do they know about me?" They know everything. I've told them stories about him, about us, about... Clara paused. They call me Mama, Sarah. I hope that doesn't... Don't. Don't apologize for finding happiness. Sarah's smile was watery, but genuine. Daniel would have wanted this for you. A family, a home, love. She touched Clara's face. He would have been so proud of you. Dinner that night was chaos. The good kind. The kind that came from too many people and too much food and too much laughter crammed into too small a space. Sarah Whitmore sat at the head of the table, surrounded by children she'd only just met, but who had already decided she was Grandma Sarah and needed to know absolutely everything about their lives. I can show you my chicken, Billy offered. Her name's Henrietta. She lives in my room. She does not live in your room, Samuel interjected. We've discussed this. She visits my room, frequently. Billy, do you have any chickens, Grandma Sarah? Sarah laughed, actually laughed, for the first time since arriving. I have 12 chickens, 3 goats, and a very stubborn mule named Herbert. Herbert? Billy was delighted. That's the best name ever. Can I visit Herbert? Can he visit Henrietta? I think that could be arranged. Clara watched them interact, her heart so full it ached. She'd thought she'd lost everything when Daniel died. She'd thought there was nothing left worth fighting for. She'd been so wrong. You're crying. Samuel's voice was soft in her ear. Clara touched her cheek. She hadn't even noticed. Happy tears. Those are the best kind. After dinner, after Sarah had been installed in the guest room with strict instructions to rest after her long journey, Clara found Samuel on the porch. Their place. Their spot. Where all their most important conversations happened. There's something I need to tell you, Clara said. Samuel tensed. Should I be worried? No. Yes. Maybe. Clara laughed nervously. I don't know how you're going to react. Clara, you're scaring me. She took his hand, pressed it flat against her stomach. I'm pregnant. Silence. Samuel stared at her, stared at his hand on her belly, stared at her face again. You're pregnant. About 2 months along, Ruth thinks. I've been waiting for the right time to tell you, and with everything happening, I wasn't sure if... Samuel kissed her. Not a gentle kiss, not a careful kiss. A kiss full of joy and shock and overwhelming emotion. A kiss that knocked her back against the porch railing and left her breathless. A baby, he said when he finally pulled back. We're having a baby. Is that okay? I know we already have 5 children, and things are just settling down and... Okay? Samuel laughed, and there were tears in his eyes. Clara, this is the best news I've ever received. A baby. Our baby. You're not overwhelmed? I'm terrified. I'm also the happiest man alive. He pulled her close, held her tight. Thank you. Thank you for staying. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for giving me everything I never knew I needed. Clara buried her face in his chest. I love you. I love you so much, it scares me. Don't be scared. We're in this together. All of it. Every hard day, every beautiful moment, every child who needs us. He tilted her chin up, met her eyes. You're not alone anymore, Clara. You never will be again. Promise? Promise. They told the children the next morning. Billy fainted. Actually fainted. Dropped right off his chair onto the kitchen floor, which caused such a commotion that Thomas started crying, which made Rose cry, which made Emma start cataloging everyone's vital signs in a panic. Is he dead? Jack demanded. He's not dead, he's dramatic, Emma said, checking Billy's pulse anyway. "He does this when he gets overwhelmed. Remember when Pa told us about the new horse?" "I don't faint," Billy protested from the floor. "I strategically rested." "On the ground?" "It's comfortable." Clara watched them, laughing so hard tears streamed down her face. Samuel caught her eye and shook his head, grinning. "So we're getting a baby?" Rose asked, her small face serious. "A real baby?" "A real baby," Clara confirmed. "A brother or sister for all of you." "I want a sister," Rose declared. "There's too many boys." "Hey!" Billy, Jack, and Thomas, who probably didn't understand but was offended anyway, protested in unison. "She's not wrong," Emma said. "The male-to-female ratio in this household is significantly skewed. A sister would restore balance." "I don't know if we get to choose," Samuel said diplomatically. "The baby's going to be whatever the baby's going to be." "Then I'll hope really hard," Rose said. "Mama says hope is powerful." Clara's heart clenched. "I did say that. And you were right. I hoped you'd stay, and you did. I hoped the bad man would go away, and he did. I hoped I'd learn to talk again, and I did." Rose climbed into Clara's lap, pressed her small hand against Clara's stomach. "I'll hope for a sister, and it'll work." "And if it's a brother?" Rose thought about this very seriously. "Then I'll love him anyway, because that's what family does." Sarah stayed for a month. She became part of the household in a way Clara hadn't expected, helping with meals, mending clothes, telling the children stories about Daniel as a boy. They loved her instantly, the way children do when they sense someone who genuinely cares. "He was always getting into trouble," Sarah told them one night, gathered around the fire. Once, when he was about Billy's age, he decided he was going to catch a wild turkey for Thanksgiving dinner. Chased that bird for 3 hours before it turned around and chased him. "Did it catch him?" Billy demanded. "Nearly took his pants right off. He came home with scratches everywhere and no turkey to show for it. But he was so proud of himself for trying." "That sounds like something Billy would do," Emma observed. "I would never," Billy protested. "I would actually catch the turkey." "Sure you would." Clara listened to them laugh, watched Sarah's face light up with memories of her son, and felt Daniel's presence in the room. Not as a ghost, not as grief, but as love. The love he'd given her. The love she was passing on. When Sarah finally left, there were tears all around. "You'll come back?" Rose asked, clinging to her grandmother's skirt. "Every chance I get," Sarah kissed her forehead. "And you can visit me. All of you. Herbert's been asking about Billy." "Herbert knows who I am?" "I may have mentioned you." The wagon pulled away, Sarah waving until she disappeared around the bend. Clara stood with her family, watching her go, feeling not sadness, but gratitude. For second chances, for families that grew instead of broke, for the stubborn persistence of love. Summer arrived with heat and new beginnings. Clara's belly grew rounder. The children talked to it constantly, Billy insisting on reading his favorite stories to the baby. Emma keeping detailed notes on Clara's symptoms for science. Rose singing lullabies every night. "What if the baby doesn't like my voice?" Rose asked one evening. "Impossible," Clara said. "Your voice is beautiful." "What if it doesn't like me?" "Also impossible. This baby is going to love you so much. You're going to be the best big sister in the whole territory." "Emma's a big sister too." "Then you'll both be the best. Together." Rose smiled, satisfied. "Okay, that's fair." The town had transformed. Not overnight, not completely, but slowly, steadily. The people of Copper Ridge were becoming the community Clara had dreamed of. They gathered for barn raisings and church socials. They helped each other through hard times. They stopped whispering about the Thornton family and started including them instead. Mrs. Patterson invited Clara to join the women's quilting circle. Old Moses taught Jack blacksmithing on Saturday mornings. Ruth the midwife became Clara's constant companion as her pregnancy progressed. "The baby's strong," Ruth said after one of her checkups. "Good heartbeat, good position. You're doing well, Clara." "I don't feel like I'm doing anything. The baby's doing all the work." "Surviving is work. Growing is work. Loving is work." Ruth smiled. "You've been doing that since the day you got here. Don't sell yourself short." The labor started on a Tuesday in late August. Clara woke before dawn with a pain so sharp she couldn't breathe. Samuel was beside her instantly, his face pale with fear. "Is it time?" "I think so." Clara gritted her teeth as another contraction hit. "Get Ruth." "I can't leave you. Samuel, get Ruth." He went. Emma appeared in the doorway, already dressed, her face determined. "I'm staying with you," she announced. "I've read 3 books on childbirth. I know what to do." "Emma, sweetheart, you should—" "I'm staying." The 10-year-old's jaw was set in a way that reminded Clara of herself. "You're my mama. I'm not leaving you." Clara grabbed her hand and held on tight. 12 hours. That's how long the labor lasted. 12 hours of pain and fear and the terrifying uncertainty of bringing new life into the world. Ruth was calm and capable, her hands steady, her voice soothing. Samuel paced outside the door, driving Jack and Billy crazy. Rose sat in the hallway, singing softly, her small voice carrying through the walls. "Almost there," Ruth said as the sun began to set. "One more push, Clara, one more." Clara screamed, pushed, felt something give way inside her, felt a rush of pressure and release, and then a cry, high and thin and perfect. "It's a girl," Ruth announced, her voice thick with emotion. "You have a daughter, Clara." Clara sobbed as Ruth placed the baby in her arms. Tiny fingers, tiny toes, a face red and scrunched and absolutely beautiful. "Hello," Clara whispered. "Hello, my darling. I've been waiting for you." The door burst open. Samuel stood there, tears streaming down his face, the children crowding behind him. Is it? It's a girl." Clara looked up at him, at all of them. "We have a daughter." Rose let out a shriek of pure joy. "I knew it! I hoped, and it worked!" They named her Hope. It was Rose's idea, and no one could argue with it. Hope Thornton, born on a Tuesday in late August, weighing 7 pounds and 4 ounces, with her father's gray eyes and her mother's determination. Clara held her all through that first night, watching her sleep, marveling at the miracle of her existence. Samuel sat beside them, his arm around Clara's shoulders, his other hand resting gently on Hope's back. 6 children, he said quietly. "I have 6 children." "Scared?" "Terrified," he smiled. "Also grateful, also proud, also more in love with you than I ever thought possible." "That's a lot of feelings. That's parenthood." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. "Thank you." "For what?" "For finding me, for keeping me, for giving me a reason to stay." "Clara, you gave yourself that reason. I just gave you a place to put down roots." Samuel kissed her temple. "You're the one who decided to grow." Months passed. Hope grew. She was a happy baby, quick to smile, slow to cry. The older children adored her, fighting over who got to hold her, who got to feed her, who got to make her laugh. "She smiled at me," Billy insisted one morning. "That means I'm her favorite." "Babies smile when they have gas," Emma informed him. "It's not a sign of preference." "She doesn't have gas,"
She's too beautiful for gas. Everyone has gas, Billy. It's basic biology. Not hope. Clara watched them argue and felt a peace she'd never known before. Not the absence of pain. She would always carry Daniel's loss, would always remember the darkness she'd walked through. But pain tempered by joy, grief balanced by love. A full life, finally, after everything. The letter came on Hope's first birthday. It was from the territorial governor, the same governor who had ordered Webb's arrest. Clara opened it with shaking hands. "What does it say?" Samuel asked. Clara read the words 3 times before she could believe them. "They're reopening Daniel's case. Officially. They're going to posthumously exonerate him, clear his record, issue a formal apology from the territory." Samuel's arms came around her. "Clara, that's wonderful." "He's going to be remembered as an innocent man, as a hero who tried to expose corruption. After all this time." She couldn't finish. The tears came too fast, too hard. But they weren't sad tears. They were the tears of something finally being made right. The ceremony was held in autumn, 1 year after the nightmare had ended. The whole town came. Daniel's mother traveled from Ohio. Even some of the men who had worked at the mine came. Men who had known Daniel, who had suspected the truth, who had been too afraid to speak. "Daniel Whitmore gave his life in pursuit of justice," the governor said, his voice carrying over the crowd. "He was failed by the system that was supposed to protect him. But his legacy lives on, in the reforms we've implemented, in the corruption we've exposed, and in the family he left behind." Clara stood with Samuel, Hope in her arms, the 5 older children arranged around them. When the governor unveiled a plaque in Daniel's honor, she stepped forward. "My husband was a good man," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "He believed in honesty, in hard work, in standing up for what was right even when it was dangerous. He was killed for those beliefs, but he wasn't destroyed by them." She looked at her family, this beautiful, chaotic, improbable family that had grown from the ashes of her grief. "Daniel taught me that love doesn't end with death, that hope persists even in the darkest times, that home isn't a place you find, it's a choice you make every day to stay and fight and build something better." She touched the plaque, ran her fingers over Daniel's name. "I will carry you with me forever, my love. But I won't live in the past anymore. I'll live in the present, with the family I found. And I'll teach our children, all of them, what you taught me. That courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that something matters more than fear." She stepped back. Samuel took her hand. And Clara Thornton, who had once wanted to die in the snow, who had been saved by 5 stubborn children and a quiet cowboy, who had fought her way through fire and ice and injustice to find her place in the world, finally let herself believe that she deserved all of it. Every struggle, every triumph, every moment of joy. Home. Years later, when people asked Clara about her life, she always told them the same thing. "I was lost," she would say, "completely, utterly lost. And then 5 children found me in a blizzard and asked me to be their mother." "What did you say?" they would ask. And Clara would smile, the smile of a woman who had walked through fire and emerged stronger, the smile of a wife and mother and grandmother, the smile of someone who had learned that the best stories don't end when the suffering ends. They begin. "I said yes," she would answer. "I said yes, and I never stopped saying it." Because that's what family was, she had learned. Not blood, not obligation, not circumstance. Choice. The choice to show up every single day, even when it was hard. The choice to love,
even when love felt impossible. The choice to stay, even when staying was the most terrifying thing in the world.
Clara had made that choice on a frozen day in a small room with a quiet cowboy and 5 desperate children. And she would keep making it every morning for the rest of her life. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. Because they were hers, and she was theirs, and nothing, not death, not distance, not all the cruelty in the world, could ever change that. She had found her home. She had found her family. She had found herself. And this time, she was never letting go.